Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new format here on Enterprise AI Unlocked. I'm Paul Brzozowski, co-founder at Olakai, and today we are launching the Roundtable. Here's the idea. Once a month, I sit down with two people I trust, and we will cut through the noise in enterprise AI. And we tackle one big topic together. No scripts, no vendor pitches, just three practitioners telling you what we are actually seeing in the market. So with that, let me introduce the team. Jason Smith is the AI lead for EMEA at Publicis Groupe, where he drives AI strategy and transformation across one of the world's largest communications groups. Jason lives in what he calls the messy middle between AI strategy and actual delivery. He designs human AI operating models, builds governance frameworks, and has led large-scale AI hubs and GenAI platforms inside complex organizations. He's also a strategic advisor at Lyra Labs and a co-chaired the Finos Responsible AI Working Group. Jason, great to have you on.
Good, Paul. I can't wait to get stuck into some of these topics.
Absolutely. Thank you. Likewise. And Rob Saltrese, you might remember him from one of the other shows that we recorded recently. He's the co-founder and the COO of Lyra Labs, which helps organizations understand how AI actually behaves inside their operations. Through Lyra Pulse, they build AI efficacy baselines, revealing where AI is creating value, where it is introducing friction, and where outcomes are what leaders expect. We'll maybe tell you all about it a little bit more later on. But Rob sees the gap between what organizations think the AI is doing and what is actually doing. So Rob, welcome. Looking forward to this one.
Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. All right, let's get into it. This month's topic, Agentic AI adoption in practice. Where are we really at in 2026? Lots of buzzwords around agentic. Everyone is doing it. Everyone is an expert. And that's what the headlines say. And then Gartner says 40% of enterprise applications will embed AI agents by end of year. So I already see a little bit of a disconnect here. NVIDIA's latest report shows nearly half of telecom and retail companies are deploying agents already. So let's unpack today what is going on. What is 2026 thus far? So the question is, what's actually landing? What's failing? And what have we learned now that the agents are in the wild? Let's start with the honest assessment. And Jason, why won't I start with you? You are obviously inside of one of the biggest communications groups in the world, working across EMEA. Give us your honest read. Where are we actually at with agentic AI adoption in enterprise right now?
Yeah, it's a great question, I think. And I think it's probably also good to get an honest, unfiltered view across. So let's rewind it back a little bit. Okay, we had the explosion of ChatGPT and the kind of frontier models that were almost being delivered, almost every 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. And we saw that the capabilities were growing. I think what has maybe surprised a number of people, and I think me included actually, was at the end of last year, there seemed to be a leap in capability in terms of the underlying models, because let's face it, the agents will interact with underlying large language models. In terms of their ability to sustain work tasks. And I think what we saw with Claude Code in particular was maybe a bit of a breakthrough. And I think that got people very excited about the possibility that agents built on top of these LLMs that essentially could do more. As I say, the leap in terms of, if you look at the meta evaluations, the length of tasks that AIs, the large language models, can do is sort of doubling every 7 months. And they had that little bit of a, not quite a hockey stick, but certainly that little bit of an uplift with Claude Code. So I think that got everyone excited about agents, because suddenly it was like, oh, hang on, agents could do a whole bunch of different stuff. The reality of it is we're still very early days with agents. I think the other thing that we should do is distinguish between agents. So there's sort of no code, low code agents that sit within, like if you've got a Copilot license as an enterprise, you'll have the ability to create no code, low code agents. And then there's the sort of more, let's say, the coded agents, where I think most people are probably talking about. It's still early days. And there's a lots of reasons why it's still early days, which I don't know if you want to kind of go into a bit later, but I think to give you an unfiltered view, the promise is there because of the underlying capabilities of the large language models. But I think it's caught a lot of people probably by a little bit by surprise. So you've got on one hand a level of excitement of what's possible, but because of that surprise element and because of the other complicated features, which I'm guessing you probably want to go into, the level of adoption is probably, it's not something you can just switch on overnight. And I think that's probably why you're not seeing these things all over the place. Yes, it will come in 2026 though, Paul.
And we will get back to the predictions. I like, Jason, how you, in a practical fashion, immediately run into a little bit of what is an agent. What is an AI agent in the first place? And I heard AI coding agents coming up a couple of times. And then obviously the agentic workflows that I think this show initially wants to inspect a little bit more. We will get back to all those sort of adoption metrics, what we see, how we feel about things. But Rob, I'll turn to you for a minute because your lens, your purview is different. And I'd love to know, what does your data tell you about where agentic AI adoption actually stands today?
I think the interesting thing is go right back to, there's generally been themes, hasn't there, for the last few years since Gen AI came out. And actually at the end of 2024, everyone said 2025 would be the year of the agent. Now, that was the big name it was given. And in reality, it wasn't even close to being practice. And actually, you and I spoke about this at the end of last year. There wasn't really a big name given to this year. Like, what was it going to be the year of? And now, as Jason alluded to, it's kind of become the real year of the agent, right? But I think if you look at a practical layer from the businesses I'm speaking to, from the partners I'm speaking to, the real agentic builders, truth is, as Jay said, it's really only just kicking off now. I've got partners and friends in really interesting organizations who have only started to make, and these are expert technologists, they've only started to make their own really good inroads into helping their customers. Again, due to the models, what is out there, and actually the appetite of people to take these on. I mean, forget what you read in the market. The reality is most businesses are anything between 18 to 24 months behind what has been discussed at a very high end and what you read in terms of practical kind of usage and application. There'll always be a few at the forefront. As an example, we saw Bain make a big claim, huge strategic consultancy company, said October, November, that they have 10,000 agents in the business. Now, anyone who reads that, truthfully, will probably not believe a word of it. And even if they do, there is no way that they have 10,000 agents successfully being deployed and operating. So it's a bit of smoke and mirrors and people not wanting to look behind. I know one of the big four consultancies, actually go and deliver AI capabilities to global organizations, the biggest of the big. It turns out they have 17,000 agents across their business, 40 are in use, and only 4 of them add value. So you can see how some people have tried to bolt ahead and not quite got it right. But again, it comes partly back to Jason's point of what was available, the power of the models, how were they built, and were they actually built into a workflow? And again, I think the reality is they probably weren't built into a workflow. They were built as they thought to solve a little A to B problem. And in fact, maybe that's not that beneficial, wasn't then really utilized. They didn't engage with the business or the team and the people using these things and how they interact with it. So in short, then I think there's just a huge gap. Some are now making headway, and growing boutique agency consultancies are starting to have success, particularly within some private equity firms. I'd say less so in finance, some in other areas, and there's certain sectors that I think work. So yeah, I'd just say though, caution. What you read is not what's happening in reality. And, if the big global consultancies aren't getting it right, then you rest assured that a lot of other people probably aren't either. But I think it will start to come for sure.
Thank you, Rob. Honestly, agree on both sides. And I want to go back super quick, Rob, to something you said. The year of agents supposed to be the 2025, but it's not. It's 2026, and for most will be probably even 2027. Agent Force, right? Salesforce is not Salesforce anymore. It's not a trailblazer. It's an agent blazer organization. So we will unpack this a little bit, and let's actually put a little bit more of a tactical lens, and let's move from the big picture and then talk more specifics. So what I would love to do for both of you is to give me a concrete example of agentic AI that is actually working in 2026. Not a demo, not the big picture, not all that hype, not a POC, but something in production delivering measurable value. Jason, why won't you go first, sir?
I think the reality of it is, Paul, what is working, certainly from what I see, is no code agents within things like Copilot, within things like Gemini Enterprise. I think they are working. Right? I can point you to numerous individuals in my organization that are utilizing those agents to do tasks for them. Okay. But, and here's the big but, right? They're individuals who have spun up an agent to do some jobs for them. It's not a kind of workflow agent, and it certainly isn't coded in any stretch of the imagination. So I think what we're starting to see, or not starting to see, they're already in existence, personal productivity agents, if I can put it that way, within the workplace. And I think what, in fairness to Copilot and Gemini Enterprise have done is they've made it exceptionally easy, really, to create these agents that help with personal productivity tasks. But that's a world away, I think, from the agentic workflows. I am aware of one organization as an old work colleague of mine. He's just written a book on agents, Autonomous Minds, I think it's called. But his organization, it's a very small startup-y type place. They, from a coding development team, are actually utilizing agents. So I think that's what we're seeing. Personal productivity, no-code agents in enterprise platforms are definitely being used now. And as I say, I can point you to a whole bunch of different individuals that I interact with that are really getting, really significant results out of them.
I heard a few things, Jason. I actually agree with a little bit of how we want to look at agents from the perspective of categorization. So what I mean by that, I mean there is agents that will help us personally with productivity, which are almost a form of assistive AI as I classify. They will drive my efficiency, my tasks. Maybe I will build an agent that is my chief of staff. It does research for me and it points me to things, sends me emails, alerts, and it just makes me faster, smarter, quicker. And I've seen a lot of adoption there, actually on a personal level, including my life. And in the enterprise space, it's a completely different vibe. See very little of that adoption, but low code, no code will deliver some of those capabilities, Jason. I think that's what I heard from you. Then in the enterprise AI, you will actually have internal and external use case. But obviously, what we discussed a little bit more would be on leaning towards the internal efficiency, productivity through the deployment of agents, whether custom or out the box. And then we have the AI coding agents, which I think are probably out of the all agents labeled AI category, I see the most adoption. I almost don't know a developer engineer that does not use one of the big 3-5 AI coding agents these days, right? And I've seen enterprises heavily relying on it. I don't know if they measure this enough. That's something we try to solve with my business partners for the market. Nevertheless, I think this is an interesting way how you leaned towards the internal application first, and that's where you see more practitioners and actual deployment. But Rob, when you advise your clients, literally are in the trenches, even 6 months ago, you were experimenting with real deployments. Tell us a little bit more of what's working, what is the playbook, where people try to start these days to make it practical to adopt agentic workflows in their business?
I think Jason's made a very salient point, as did you, about how you categorize them first, right? I think bunching them all under one is just a terrible thing, but we're all right. This space is moving at the speed of light, and we need to be very careful about how we define things. You have coding agents, you have assistive agents internally, no code, low code versions of those, and then you have bigger agentic solutions like real complex software, as Jason said, piled into proper workflows that may be helping an entire team or a business. And then is that, as you say, angled internally or externally? So more from people I've spoken to, the ones, certainly the coding agents are something everyone has been over for the last 6-8 months or more for sure, and are getting better and better and better, and those models have changed significantly. We saw with Claude Code going from 4.5 to 4.6 was an exponential leap, right? It's huge. So that is going to be utilized heavily, I think, by people internally. I know of a few private equity backed businesses in more of the logistics and the industrial side. And these are more people I've spoken to, not that we've actually gone out and executed on. Others have done that. They have brought things into play from manufacturing and across business units and connecting them together, which I think has seen huge improvements and uptick from an organizational level, and then within logistics, and that's both internal and external, because we're talking about very complex moving parts of huge subsystems of businesses, and I think that's where it can become super powerful. So you look at the supply chain and logistics is an incredibly complex process. If you can find a way to bring those things together, that kind of is really useful. And then you've got the other new kid on the block, OpenClaw, which is wild, but again, that's more of a personal assistant from an agentic side of things. So it's helped, but it can do so many things. And I now know people that are deploying it across businesses. And if you look, so Tencent over in China, who are one of the biggest Chinese companies around, they're one of the biggest companies in the world. I think they've just announced recently something like a 5 billion spend on agentic AI coming up, of which a large chunk of that will actually be deploying OpenClaw or their own Chinese version of in WeChat, which is their biggest chat system with something like 1.3 billion users. So again, you can see how they're taking some of these things, using it internally with an internal impact as well as a customer. Theirs is going to be customer facing because it's particularly going into WeChat, but they are going all out on how do we use this across our big, global media organizations.
Yeah, so I think we all agree that the adoption is happening. Everyone has a little bit different adoption pace. They might start internally. Maybe some started with the external use case. Certainly, I think you agree with me. AI coding agents internally on the engineering and developer side, probably the most adoption so far. Already in 2025, and you mentioned this, Rob, I think around November, with Claude Code deploying 4.5 Sonnet and then Opus, that was the moment where people started leaning towards it extremely heavy. And now we are end of March, and I see this absolutely becoming a game changer, which I think actually will increase the adoption as well. So let's go to the next round. Let's talk about the fun part. What's broken? And there has to be a bit of a drama in any show, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be any good. Let's inspect where you guys seeing companies waste money or chase hype or deploy agents that are creating more problems than they solve. I think that will be something about the data. That is something that I want to bring to the table. And this time, Rob, I want to start with you because you see the fallout at that whole process on the operational level. You are tasked to advise, build, strategize, but it has to be operational at the end of the day. So, Rob, give us a little bit more of the drama side of the show.
Yeah, there's always drama, particularly when you're trying and failing, right? And I think when you mix in hype and people wanting to look like they're ahead, I mean, I just alluded to it, right? Let's look at Bain as an example. They have deployed 10,000 agents. The chances of them all working are absolutely non-existent, right? We talked about that other member of the Big Four. I won't name whom so much, but fully admitting that they've created 17,000, and yet 40 sit live and 4 add value. I mean, that says it all. So that's a lot of time, manpower, effort to put these things together. But they tried. So I guess they were trying to be ahead. They tried to go at it quickly, but they didn't have the measurement, the idea. They didn't have it planned into workflows. It wasn't really strategically done. So it's almost like, forgiving people for trying to climb a mountain first for anyone's ever done it. And they didn't have, the right equipment and everything else. So there's a blend between being a first mover, a kind of gentle follower, and then the sheep right at the end. So those people going at the front will always kind of get things wrong. There will always be wasted money, mistakes, and there's a bit of trial and error. And then if you think of then how can you go from a consultancy level into the biggest companies in the world and then give them the real life and execute properly on a strategy for them. If you can't prove it for yourself, how can you make it work for somebody else? So I think there's some sort of classic cases. Jason and I have spoken to businesses before, and this is from a simplistic point of view, who have bought 500 to 1,000 cursor licenses for an entire engineering department globally of hundreds and hundreds of people. No plan, no strategy. This was a CTO who should know better, and no deployment methodology, and no one's using it because they're scared, they're fearful, there are no use cases, there's no what does good look like, it's not been designed into their workflow and their daily job. So, you're talking 20, 30,000 pounds cost every single month with little to no return on it. So these things are there in abundance, right? From people saying, going back to your very, very first point about people saying, oh, we're doing a lot with AI, right? Because you've deployed Copilot, because you've bought licenses to X, it means absolutely nothing, in all honesty. So, yeah, I'd say there's been an awful lot of money wasted in the last 18 months, 2 years on licenses and pilots and jumping and building stuff that's just not worked at all.
Thank you. Jason, do you agree? Do you see a different set of problems?
I'm going to focus probably more on a different set of problems that I think explains why we haven't seen this agentic explosion. Okay. And these are problems that are literally I'm solving now. I was working on this stuff this morning and early afternoon. So the first thing is, if you're talking about true agents, okay, in workflows, you've got to remember that you can't just put agents on top of existing workflows. It just does not work. It just falls over, right? So that means you have to then think about, well, I have to now redesign that workflow, and I have to redesign it in a way that I can introduce agents to do repetitive tasks, and there are spaces set aside for humans, either because those spaces are messy, that an agent just, will fall over, or you want to build in a level of responsible AI and governance where you have a human in control or, a human in the loop. That is incredibly time consuming to do. And also it's a pain in the ass, right? Because from an enterprise perspective, they'll just go, well, I just bought the AI. It's like, no, actually, you've got to take a step back and do the redesign. Then you've got to think about, well, hang on a second. A lot of these workflows might require multiple agents. So how are they all going to be orchestrated to work together in coordination, right? That's, again, very difficult to do, requires you to design it, which means you have to take time and reflect and spend time designing it. Then you've got an issue around how do you solve memory and data? So a big problem, right? Agents don't have memory. So you need to figure that out. I won't even touch data, Paul, because I think we all know, right? I mean, I've lost count of how many times.
It's a classic. It's well covered. It's probably #1 post in my face on LinkedIn every Tuesday morning from the gurus, and I guess no more Sora generated content because Sora is dead.
Yeah.
But you see a lot of that AI data broken.
Then the other thing is, of course, agents carry with us an element of expense, right? So you're going to need to measure, there's going to need to be some kind of observability and measurement around actually what is this costing me, but particularly on the output side as well, like what actually is the quality of the output, am I getting some kind of drift with quality and so on and so forth? So there's a lot around evaluation and observability, which again takes time to set up and think through. And then there's the whole thing around governance and access control. What are you giving these agents access to? Big enterprises, that, is a very difficult job to try and unpick a lot of the existing legacy systems about what you give access to. Are you going to treat them like employees? Are they going to be treated differently? And what levels of access and security? How vulnerable are you to an external attack? Let's face it, a pretty significant external attack fairly recently where agents got hit, right? So you've got to think about that governance and security piece. All of this stuff I've listed none of it is like simple, easy stuff that you can just, turn on with a switch. And so I think these are the things that are causing the problems. And also these are the friction points that mean we're not getting that massive kind of uptake in adoption that, we started this conversation with. And I found my ex-colleague's book. It's called Autonomous Minds: How Agentic AI Predicts and Learns to Enable Productivity and Empowerment. And his name is Javier Zabala. So you can pick it up on Amazon, but it's well worth a read if you're really interested in agents and some of the pitfalls and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's my take, Paul.
Thank you, Jason. And in a true YouTuber, influencer, content maker fashion, there will be a link in the description below for the book, obviously, right? But I think the book is actually talking a lot about what this topic today is about, recommended from Jason Smith himself. And I'll take that recommendation highly. So I just close this because I know we have to speed up a little bit and keep the momentum with the dynamics we set with the audience. But I heard something that is super close to my heart. More than 100 deployments behind my belt or witness being part of. The problem with the agentic at the end of the day is it's super complex. It's not as simple as building an agent, open source or cloud code tutorial over the weekend for ourselves, because it cannot really go wrong, right? It's probably won't be too expensive either. Your agent that in our minds is what enterprises would do, pretty simple to set up and has a pretty cool impact on efficiency. And that's true. I hope we all experience this in our lives and we surround ourselves with some personal agents to help with tasks. But enterprise AI is different. It's more calculated. We will not be diving into the data, but that is actually a huge problem to begin with. You cannot deploy anything agentic if it is not actually making decisions of the right data sets and then connectivity between the systems. That is the cloud problem that many enterprises still carry over. So there is that IT burden that needs to be fixed. What about the strategy? How is it actually orchestrated? Who will be the owner of it? Do we have the budget for it? Who will be supervising this in the first 90, 180 days? Do we have any measurement tools? What is the governance? Is this actually aligned with our policies? Do we need to talk to legal? We don't have a policy actually for that right now. We probably need to write one. How's your timeline? I think I can have something next month as a draft. 2 months later, you're still in the drafts phase. So there will be so many real enterprise AI bottlenecks along the way, building something that I can probably, with you guys on this call, design, build, make it colorful, vibe code over the weekend. But real enterprise works different. They have targets, they have goals, they run business every day without agentic. And now the question is, how can we move our existing business, which is very complex to begin with, into the agentic workflows? And I think this is one of the elements that slow us down in the fast adoption on the true enterprise level. And not everyone is JP Morgan Chase where can they deploy $300 million and hundreds of people experimenting every day to get them closer to that, right? So thank you, Rob. Thank you, Jason. Now, let's close with the lightning round. One bold prediction each about agentic AI. 30 seconds, or I'll give you 45 seconds. No hedging, Jason, you're up and time is on as well.
Okay. I'm really interested to see where OpenClaw goes in the enterprise. I think what they did was pretty cool. I think it's a smart move by OpenAI to kind of snap the guy up, and I'm sure we'll see something come about as a result of that. I'm starting to see some individuals who are on that frontier they're using it for their own work. And so for me, that could be quite an exciting area to see an enterprise ready version of that, because that might be quite interesting. 45 seconds?
53, but we will take it. We'll edit, right? Rob, you up.
He's stolen one of my ideas, although put it more eloquently than I did.
You already lost 10 seconds.
I know I've lost 10 seconds now. I think it's less on the technology itself. It's more that I hope more from the summer onwards people will be brave enough to look at this properly in the right way. I think they will start doing the definitions of what the different types of agents are and where they can start sensibly, as in can they start with the simple ones and bring them into play, actually have workflows designed properly with their staff and kind of remap things. From the tech lens, I also think then if OpenAI have done this, as Jason says, by very carefully buying OpenClaw, what will come next, right? Will we see the one from China that comes out and be a big competition for it? And is it likely to be super powerful? I'd imagine it probably will be. So, where will that go? But I think then we'll get some horrendous mistakes because it has no guardrails. So I think watch this space for some really exciting usage and deployment, but with some big, probably bumps on the way.
That was definitely not 45 seconds.
Oh,
it wasn't. No.
We'll have to rethink this whole regime right here.
It's a lightning round, Rob.
Sorry.
I'm probably the worst anyways. I'll close it with a practical prediction. In the regular AI Enterprise Unlocked series, we always ask leaders what they predict. So I'm a little bit biased because I agree with most of the voices I talk to. I'm going to go back to my recent episode with a chief sales officer, Anup Kara. He said something that's still stuck in my mind, and I'll just close it like this. Our job is not to buy AI. Our job is to buy outcomes. So my prediction for agentic AI is the outcomes that they can drive. And if it's a small, simple invoice processing agent, that is the outcome you start with. If this is a simple CRM updating agent, extracting data, summarizing the call, helping me to get to the task or get the task done quicker, that is my prediction. And this is what the next 3-6 months should be all about. It's not all about building the most complex end-to-end billion-dollar agentic workflows. I don't think many people are ready for it, maybe 0.1% of the market. So my prediction is we will focus on making agentic AI driving our business outcomes and impact. Probably not 45 seconds either, but
45 seconds. I like it though.
Thank you, Jason. And guys, this is a wrap on the very first Enterprise NA Unlocked Roundtable. Hope you enjoyed it. There's quite a few takeaways that I will put into an article on LinkedIn as a follow-up. We will put a quick reel, 50-minute version of this as well with the highlights. Always open to feedback. Looking forward to hear from the audience. What is their adoption take? What problems do they see? And please provoke next topic with us as well. We want to make it all interesting for the audience. It will be always Enterprise AI. Next month we will be back. Appreciate you, Jason, jumping on. I know it's been a long day. Rob, as always, appreciate you as well. And till the next one.
Till the next
Cheers.
one, guys.
Thank you. See you then.
Bye-bye.